Lucie Jones will be the 60th act to represent the UK at the final of the Eurovision Song Contest, singing a stripped-back pop ballad called Never Give Up on You. The announcement came at the climax of a music-packed 90-minute selection show on BBC Two, full of exuberant Eurovision atmosphere and at times eccentric contributions from the panel of judges, Bruno Tonioli, Sophie Ellis-Bextor, and celebrity vocal coach C. Sammy. But will Lucie Jones's performance be enough to bring home the prize for the UK this year? We'll find out for sure in May. The Eurovision Song Contest 2017 final takes place in Kyiv, Ukraine, on May 13. In the meantime, here's what we learned from this evening's selection show. Lucie Jones is our choice, but can she win Eurovision? The accomplished musical theatre actress and former X Factor contestant who will be representing the country in 2017 couldn't be further from the style of Joe and Jake, who sang You're Not Alone for the UK last year and finished a disappointing 24th. They were paint-by-numbers boyband pop, whereas Lucie Jones is singing a simpler, more heartfelt ballad, which deftly showcases her truly gorgeous voice. Few of the other countries' acts have so far been announced for this year's finals of the competition, so at the moment it's difficult to predict the UK's chances of winning overall. But last year's winner, Jamila, won for Ukraine by singing a personal and heartfelt song, and if the circumstances are right, often emotional performances like Lucie Jones's can really win over the voting public. We're a long way from the final, but we've made a respectable decision and now we can only hope for the best. Mel is now officially Eurovision Queen, and shows the BBC is finally getting it right. With a smorgasbord of puns, Ryback and think of Norway, she said at one point, while introducing a performance from Norway's previous winner Alexander Rybak, cheeky callbacks to memorable Eurovision moments, including Javine's wardrobe malfunction in 2005, and more than a dash of innuendo reminiscent of her days presenting the Great British Bake Off. Mel looked completely at home once more hosting the UK's Eurovision selection show. She's clearly passionate about the competition and is good at blending authority with silliness. She has proven to be such a good presenter that, if by some miracle the UK does win, it's hard to imagine a scenario where Mel doesn't host a UK staging of the final. With her at the helm, the BBC's Eurovision coverage is finally in keeping with how seriously Eurovision is taken in the rest of the participating countries, and that makes it more fun for everyone. Oh, and love love peace peace, the homage to all Eurovision songs that Sweden put together as the halftime show at last year's final, is so funny that it's always worth watching, so hats off to the BBC for recognizing its brilliance and showing it again in its entirety while the votes were being counted. But they should have ditched the getting to know you pre-recorded sections with the acts before each performance. We could all probably guess that every single one of the acts had loved music from a young age. So did we really need to hear them awkwardly assert their musical pedigrees before each song? There's no time for this in the final itself, so in future the acts should just get on with proving they can sing a great song. Is Bruno Tonioli a sleeper agent for the Italian government, now trying to sabotage the UK's Eurovision chances? It's not entirely clear why the Italian Strictly Come Dancing judge, who hails from one of Britain's biggest rivals in the competition, was invited to be part of the panel commenting on each act after their performances, given that Eurovision is primarily a song contest and not a dancing one. And he didn't seem too concerned with improving the UK's chances of winning, either. Presumably the secret services are looking into his involvement. That said, he wasn't as unhelpful as Sophie Ellis-Bextor, when she said she wasn't sure her granny would like Olivia Garcia's performance of Freedom Hearts. Nobody asked your granny, Sophie. These songs don't represent the diversity of the UK music scene right now. Although it's refreshing that every song on the short list chosen by the BBC sounded at least a bit like a modern pop number, which hasn't always been the case, they still didn't represent all the varied kinds of songs that tend to top the charts in the UK. This is one of the UK's recurring stumbling blocks at Eurovision. Other countries know how rich our music scene is, and how many internationally famous stars come from Britain, so when we don't send acts that represent the general quality of our output, it can rankle with voters. As an entertainment show, it beats The Voice hands down. Eurovision, You Decide had great singing, a sense of jeopardy, a charismatic host and a prize worth winning. As a prime-time entertainment talent show, it was much more enjoyable than plenty of formats the BBC has tried in recent years. Maybe next year we should make like Sweden and turn the selection process into an epic multi-episode series. It could even have an extra sparkly boot camp challenge, a camp boot camp, perhaps. How the acts measured up. Winner: Lucie Jones. Never Give Up on You, written by The Treatment, Amélie de Forest and Laurie Martin. Former X Factor contestant turned musicals actress Lucie Jones is currently appearing in the UK tour of Rent, and formerly starred in the stage shows Les Miserables and Legally Blonde. She's a charming personality with a great voice. But the song she will be singing in Kyiv is no show-stopping dance number. Never Give Up on You is a relatively low-key, intimate tearjerker ballad, performed by a barefoot Jones in a floor-length red velvet dress, which gives the song a slight Kate Bush feel. Jones is a confident, highly experienced performer with a flawless pop voice who will likely be unfazed by Eurovision's enormous audience. And the song is simple enough to show the power of her voice with no need for gimmicky dancers or staging effects. But if her vocals aren't perfect on the night, the song might just be in danger of feeling as if it never really gets going. This is odd, as it's co-written by previous Eurovision winner Amélie de Forest, so the credentials are watertight. The judges in the room seem to be bewitched by her, though, which bodes well for the Eurovision juries. And with the right staging and development, the final performance could be electrifying. Holly Brewer. I Wish I Loved You More. Written by Kevin Fisher, Courtney Harrell, Laurel Barker, Macias Franda, Johannes Gard and Oliver Lundstrom. The 21-year-old Holly Brewer from Milton Keynes, who auditioned for X Factor in 2015, roared out this power ballad. It sounded much better live than it did in its slightly wan-recorded version, and as a bonus, the title could be read as a Brexit breakup anthem, so it ticked the topical box. Her voice was stunning, and I mean that literally, because if she belted out those high notes standing too close to you, you'd fall over. But the song itself felt unimaginative, with nothing quirky or unique about it to woo a Eurovision audience that enjoys being surprised. Daniel Johnson. Light Up the World. Written by Dan McAllister, Rick Blaskey, Greg Walker, Chris Sutherland and Amira Rowlance. Whenever I try to remember this song I just hear Take That's Rule the World in my head, and the songs aren't a million miles away from each other. When this song really kicked into gear though, it was a soaring performance from Daniel Johnson, who was an X Factor finalist in 2009. Unfortunately there were some sound mixing issues at the beginning which seemed to affect Johnson's pitching, but he recovered well and gave an energetic performance. Despite some nifty backing dancers, the reaction from the panel was lukewarm. Olivia Garcia. Freedom Hearts. Written by Gabriel Allers, Sebastian Malstapier, Linnea Nelson, and Laurel Barker. The catchiest and most obviously Eurovision-friendly song came from Olivia Garcia, a 16-year-old who was a contestant on last year's X Factor. She also won on cool points, cutting a defiant figure on stage in a sci-fi metallic jumpsuit and matching trainers. Freedom Hearts had a simple structure and few lyrics, but it still sounded the most contemporary of the six, and even though Olivia Garcia would have been the youngest Eurovision finalist since 1990, she delivered a blazing performance that belied her years. Nate Simpson. What Are We Made Of? Written by John Hallgren, Eric Lumiere, and DWB. Eurovision fatigue was beginning to set in by the time this Slough native from last year's X Factor performed yet another power ballad, and sadly the song wasn't lively enough to bring any real energy to proceedings. Nate Simpson's voice was beautiful, but he was hampered by a lumbering song that seemed to go on for about 3 years, which would never have cut the Eurovision mustard. Selena Mastroianni. I Don't Wanna Fight. Written by The Treatment, Nicole Blair, and Marley Harwood. Yet another former X Factor contestant, Selena Mastroianni delivered her generic, but typically Eurovision, love and peace message to a banging club beat, with a bit of seductive dancing for good measure. Her voice sometimes wandered off from where it was supposed to be, which was probably what scuppered her chances of being selected, but overall it was a committed, danceable performance with some very watchable choreography adding to the party atmosphere. Extra points for her excellent sparkly black trousers, too. This was a perfectly respectable Eurovision number, and it's a shame that it won't be heading to Kiev.